Retarded. A word that can be used to describe a lot of people in this country. It is, however, also a word that is alternately offensive to some or used way too much by others. Let me make myself clear then. When I talk about people being retarded, I don't mean those who are born mentally retarded. I mean the people who are born and are now retarded. I'm talking about the guy who drives a motorcycle 120 miles per hour down the freeway without a helmet on. I'm talking about people who willfully retard their own mental processes, choosing not to think for themselves. Why am I talking about them? It can be summed up in 4 simple words. Don't be that guy. What's the cause of all this kind of thinking? Well, in a lot of cases, the news media. Let's face it, sensationalism sells, and the bottom dollar is what matters to those companies. And crime and disasters are far more interesting than other news. You don't hear a whole lot about, the Boy Scout helping the old lady across the street, or the bake sale at the local school. Also, the fact is, people will take the news that is presented and they'll blow it out of proportion. Let's look back at, the early 2000s, when we had that whole slew of incidences of Catholic molestation coming up, of priests molesting altar boys and the like. The Catholic Church did a study, and it only came to about 4%, which still more than it should be, but it's nothing like the level most people think of. Most people think back to that time and they're like, maybe I shouldn't send my kids to a Catholic church. Because there's that whole image now that all priests are going to molest kids, and that's not the case. Also, let's face it, the media places their own spin on the facts. Have you ever turned to CNN, watched a story, and then swapped over to Fox News and seen the exact same story but completely different portrayal? You're not even sure it's the same story? Well, let's face it. The people who are given the story have their own agenda. And the only true way to get all the facts is from different sources. CNN, BBC, Fox News, as much as you can. So, what kind of a speaker would I be if I didn't back up these kind of statements without evidence? So let's first look at a couple of examples that hit close to home for me. Columbine. I was in my freshman year of high school when the Columbine shootings happened. I'm from Colorado. And I don't know if you remember the news, but I very clearly do. There was always talks of the Gothic movement and, the trench coat mafia. They'll kill you, they cut themselves, etc., etc. It was not a very pleasant time to be goth. The killers of Columbine weren't even goths. They had trench coats to hide their guns. But because the trench coat had been a staple of Gothic fashion, it was thought they were goths for a long time. Another great instance, or I should say, an example of a bad situation, was the Scott Dileski case back in 2005. For those who don't know, this was basically Scott Dileski was almost 17-year-old who broke into his neighbor's house to rob her, and she came home and he killed her, and trying to get away with it. And because he had a darker atmosphere about him, he was into Marilyn Manson, some other of those more punk alternative types of music. It was labeled as a goth murder massacre. And in fact, there was a Fox News interview with Voltaire, who is a modern day musician, artist, etc. within the Gothic movement. And they asked him, what is goth and all that. And he explained what goth is, kind of what I did with my last speech. But he also made a comment that was really important, and that was, why am I seeing goth murder here as the headline? If the defendant had been into country or rap, would we hear country murder or rap murder? Probably not. And he pointed out that, goth is something that is outside, it's mysterious, it's different. And so that was his opinion of why we kept seeing this kind of thing. And it's not just goths that it happens to. It's any group that is considered mysterious and different. Let's look at Muslims as another example. America, despite having religious freedom, is predominantly a Christian nation. And after September 11th, there was a lot of persecution of Muslims. I remember thinking that they might start trying to form more concentration camps again. I remember hearing people talking about that. I remember it was my senior year of high school that they had to start a Muslim student federation just to say, hey, we're not like these guys. Another example, Fort Hood, just happened about a month ago. I was down in Vegas for work down there, and I had a friend who had to go home. He had a family emergency with my roommate out there. We were down at the BX. He had to pick up some cigarettes, and we were getting dinner. And on the news, I saw the headline, "Should Muslims be allowed in the military?" As if it was just okay to just casually discuss violating the U.S. Constitution. No, you can't do that. So when you look at it from this angle, it becomes very quickly apparent that the media portrays the facts with their own spin to sensationalize it, which leads to people's opinions being swayed by that own spin, and problems arise. Goths, Muslims, and theoretically any kind of outsider group should not be persecuted as a whole over the actions of a few, whether that few is members of that group or not. So I close with two requests from my audience. First, think for yourself rather than letting others decide for you. And second, don't be that guy.